Hopefully you can't hear my dog rumbling around the floor. Louis just having a great time playing with all the toys that he never usually touches.
Only during podcasts does he like to bite his toys. Hello and welcome to Off Script by Hey Radio. I'm James and I run an agency called Parallax, and I'm joined with Josh, who runs Stac and the Hey events. Today we're doing a bit of a year roundup, so we're going to talk about all the good and bad bits across the year.
So I think we've had a pretty good run on the podcast this year. I don't know how you're feeling about it.
Yeah, it's been really good. Had some good feedback.
Yeah, definitely. It's been really enjoyable. It's been nice to talk through a variety of different topics. And as we get towards the end of the year, it kind of made sense to do a bit of a roundup. So I thought we'd do a 2021 developer roundup.
Yeah, a lot's happened and it'll be good to chat through.
A lot has happened. And as we were compiling we were going through the months, looking at different kind of key events through the months. It kind of came, there's a lot of things that have occurred in the dev community and the wider kind of tech community, I guess.
Yeah, and loads of recent security stuff as well, which is causing plenty of headaches. But
yes,
yeah.
What a lovely one to round off December on our monthly run through as well. So we just thought we'd run through the months and kind of talk through things that kind of popped out to us, which is good.
So starting in January.
Yeah, so first of all, can I just shout out Cooper Press, because Cooper Press runs some fantastic newsletters, Frontend Focus and Ruby Weekly, amongst others. Going through the archives of Cooper Press really helped kind of figure out some key events, looking through the months to see what had gone down. So just a shout out and thank you for compiling those archives, because it was super helpful.
Awesome.
So the first thing I thought we'd kick off with in January, which was important to me, but probably no one else, was Google Cloud Functions added support for Ruby.
Yeah, I mean, we've already had Ruby support in Lambda for a while.
Yes.
There is Ruby on Jets, which is a serverless Ruby on Rails-like framework,
yes,
which looks pretty cool. Serverless framework supported Ruby for a bit, but yeah, for it to come to Google Cloud Functions, that rounds it off. You've got it in Azure, you've got it in AWS, and now Google Cloud.
I was really surprised to see it only just being added to Google Cloud Functions, but I don't know why. I just kind of always thought that they supported it, but
I think there's possibly a way that you could hack around it. But I think Rails is getting better at supporting serverless stuff. You get that cold boot time though still, don't you? But,
I think I guess there's different frameworks that lend itself better to some of the kind of serverless architectures. So some of the more lightweight HTTP handlers and things like that. But obviously serverless even abstracts a lot of that away from your process as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that kind of popped out for me was the whole conversation around branching. And I think it might have started towards the end of 2020, but the conversation around the whole master-slave naming in branches and, the historical meanings of those words and how it affected, people who are working with projects that use that sort of naming.
Yeah.
It was good that in January, GitHub added an easy way to rename that stuff in the web UI. And I know that a lot of places followed. I think, I think it might have been Rails or another framework. It might have been Laravel looked at, renaming the main branch and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And obviously the defaults changed a bit ago, didn't they, on GitHub to main, which makes sense. And the tooling's now, arrived with us early in the year. I think it's quite easy to transition over, isn't it? So.
Yeah, I think it was quite nice to see how easy it was in Git, and obviously I'm sure it was some effort for GitHub to add it, but it was quite nice to see the community kind of follow suit. Yeah,
just my muscle memory that needs to catch up now.
Yeah, I still do it. Even to this day, I still type it. So yeah, it's I was going to say I love those kind of things. I don't love those kind of things. Obviously, there's some terrible history to some of the language used, but I do like it when the community goes, "Oh, that's not quite right. Should we just change it en masse?" And then it kind of just happens.
Yeah, like the allow list, deny list stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It just sort of makes sense if you can do quick tweaks like that, just to make to make it better, then do it.
Yeah, I think there's a special shout out to all the assholes who don't do that. And who just think they have to champion things for no particular reason. If it doesn't offend you, then there's really no harm in changing it.
Absolutely.
So what else happened in January?
Puppeteer ported to TypeScript.
Yes.
And they did it gradually, which is one of the benefits of implementing TypeScript, is you don't need to go all in.
Yes.
But it's an example of a well-used project.
Yes.
That was originally just plain old JavaScript, biting the bullet and going TypeScript, which, looking at it, it does make it worth it, especially if you're like a library.
Yeah.
Because when people use you and you have an IDE,
yeah,
all the auto completions and stuff are nice if you are typed, and also plain old JavaScript project. Can use you even if you are TypeScript.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be, pollute the rest of it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, yes. I guess so for those that don't know, Puppeteer is Google's browser driving engine. How would you describe it?
Yeah, it's Google's Selenium.
Yes.
But less flaky.
Yeah, with less waits and sleeps.
And Java. Yeah. Less Java.
I guess the nice thing about the conversion to TypeScript is, that the way that Puppeteer is kind of written and whatnot kind of ties closer into the way that Chrome itself's built and how the browser kind of runs, I guess. So in terms of that kind of typed language, that typed environment, does it kind of bring things closer in terms of that kind of mental mindset? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a nice project, and it seems to be the thing that a lot of modern testing libraries use underneath. Yeah. It's just a shame it's just so closely tied to Chrome. Or does it support different browsers now?
I think it may support Firefox, but I could be talking rubbish. But I definitely think they made a conscious effort to not be this just works on Chrome, because obviously the different uses for Selenium and whatnot means that you want to use it for testing different browsers, different environments. You don't want to have that Chrome-specific browser testing, do you?
Yeah, although all browsers are now Chrome, so...
Yeah, which makes it easier, right?
Yeah, so Firefox, well, we'll come on to later, they're not doing so well, but if Microsoft's browser's now Chrome, Opera's Chrome, it's leading down a bad route, possibly.
The whole Microsoft Edge, the whole way that's all gone is really interesting. As I was looking through the year, actually, there was just a gradual mass deprecation of all Microsoft versions of browsers.
But this is going to be the new works in IE6, isn't it?
Yes.
It works in Chromium-based, Blink-based browsers.
Yeah, interesting, definitely. And kind of that. Speaking of that moves on quite nicely to and some other huge news that landed in January, which is the AVIF image format, which I remember Jake Archibald did a fantastic article on of how to use it.
Yeah, so some of the more recent image formats have actually come from video formats.
Yeah.
So when Flash died, some of the technology from On2 escaped that and formed into VP6, and then Google used that as their video codec.
Yeah.
Modern image formats came out of that. Sorry about the squeaky dog toy. But yeah, AVIF is basically a single frame version of AV1 video format.
Yes.
But it's a load of companies come together and they've gone, right, what's bad about video at the moment?
Yes.
Mostly around patents and the MPEG group, where you have to give license fees to. A lot of people don't realize if you develop something or publish something like a game or something and it uses some technology that the MPEG group holds their rights to, you have to give them some money, and that money is a sliding scale. Which
is bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, so you can't then distribute a browser for free because you need to pay somebody 50p a go or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they came together and were like, well, this is daft, so we'll pull some patents together and we'll make sure that this is all open and anyone can use it. And it's really good. It's what is it? It's like Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, Intel, Microsoft, Mozilla, all the people have come together and gone, yeah, let's do this. Maybe not Apple, but maybe Apple's just sticking with H.264. But it's good. And you can decide how long you want to spend compressing something as well.
Yeah.
So if you want to spend an age and really optimize it, you can do that. if you want to compress something really quickly, you could do that as well.
And as you said, I think if you've got any forces behind making that work on the web, it's those big companies, right? Apart from maybe Apple, as you said, that would probably pop it in Safari only and protected it.
Yeah, although JavaScript's getting so quick these days, you could probably render it in JavaScript.
Yeah,
but yeah, it is good.
So the only other thing that I had on my list for January was Rails introduced something called Hotwire. So DHH, which we'll get onto at some point later on, started looking at different ways to modernize with the Rails core team, obviously, not just DHH, how we can modernize JavaScript usage in Rails. And one of the interesting things that they kind of revisited time and time again was how we can remove the need for JavaScript altogether and just pipe static HTML fragments from the server responses into the DOM, I guess.
Yeah.
And Hotwire and Turbo and a few other different implementations for how to navigate with as little JavaScript as possible seems to still be pretty prevalent in Rails.
Yep, and also that's spread into Laravel and other communities. So you could use Turbo with Laravel if you wanted. There's also Livewire, which I think is a bit more of a port, which we've contributed to because it didn't work behind a load balancer, so we fixed that.
Oh, right.
Well, this went with a slightly different patch, but it was our underlying ideas that went into that.
How come it didn't work behind the load balancers?
They were doing some weird stuff where they were caching and using a view cache, but it was non-deterministic.
Okay.
And then weird things happen, but only at scale. So all the small projects are like, yeah, this is fine. And then we're like, oh no, it doesn't work.
Yeah, caching remains to be a problematic.
Yeah, it just needs someone to use it at scale. Unfortunately, that was us and a few other agencies first. So it should now be fixed.
Awesome. So I think that concludes January. Quite a lot happened in January. I think kicking the year off with a bang. So I guess moving on to February. One of the things that stuck out to me was an article by Remy Sharp, which was the web didn't change, you did. And I think we might have referenced this in one of our first podcasts, actually.
Yeah, I think sometimes it does feel like you need to set up a load of base level stuff, like you when you do like a fresh React project, you install like 1 million packages and you're getting Webpack going and all this kind of stuff. But you don't have to do all that. No. Like you could just write plain old JavaScript still and it's fine.
Yeah.
And I think library authors should be quite mindful that people will want to do that, especially if they're just hacking something together.
Yeah.
So if you've got a framework or a library that people want to use, if you can expose that in a way where they just hot link it, and they can do it in a code pen or whatever, then it just keeps it nice and accessible, doesn't it?
Do you reckon that's going to change in terms of our expectations as developers that have been in the industry for quite a while? We can remember some of those times where we didn't have the build steps, didn't know that. Do you reckon engineers and developers that are kind of coming to the industry now and are used to those sort of build steps and phases and different compile targets and stuff, do you reckon because that's what they've kind of grown up with and what they've learned, it's less of an issue? Or
I don't know. I think it's a lot to learn for new starters, and it's a frustration point for junior devs, I think, especially. But it's a frustration for me as well, because if I'm jumping around lots of different projects and it takes me a good solid hour just to get a local environment going, that's a problem, right? But there are new package managers, new things coming out, but it's just more competing stuff that things has to work with. I mean, we did touch on this in one of the podcast episodes. Wasn't the web better 10 years ago? And there was just a joy of just including jQuery and cracking on, but you can still do that. But I do think it's tricky, isn't it? I
guess it's also the kind of adoption curve for browsers as well, because we're seeing a lot more support for modules and loading JavaScript from different places and stuff. So I wonder if it's just a case as the eventual target being the browser catches up with these tools, there's less need for the build step altogether, right?
Yeah, and it's with HTTP 3 and all that jazz, you shouldn't have to care about the low-level details anymore.
Yeah, just back to building stuff and linking to things and... Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing that came out in February was the Microsoft's Edge browser added a kids mode, which I thought was a worthwhile thing to mention, because I think first of all, obviously, you want to make sure, the younger generation are safer online. There's lots of different apps that have Netflix's kid mode, for example, fences off content, make sure they can't access some of the kind of more mainstream films and episodes and stuff. But I thought it was quite interesting to see how we fence it off in an environment that is made to not be fenced off.
Yeah, that must be a really tricky problem. Like if it's based on an allow list, then how do you discover content that sits outside of that? But I guess if it's for very young kids, then it does make sense, doesn't it? Because you just want them to stumble across well-vetted content platforms like YouTube Kids and all that kind of stuff. It's a tricky one because, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine it's a bit of a minefield. You want to plonk your kid in front of a computer, but don't necessarily want all the guardrails to not be there. Yeah,
the more I started thinking about this, the more complicated it became in terms of it's not just an allow list of sites, it's also functionality on those sites. So, from the more trivial ones like allowing notifications and, all of a sudden you've got different ways for content to be piped to that user. But also things like microphone access, video access.
Oh, yeah.
All those sorts of things.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, actually, it's actually the functionality of the browser itself which you want to fence off as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That all needs turning off, doesn't it?
But that also raises an interesting challenge for authors of these websites that are aimed at children, because all of a sudden you're relying on modern technologies, but they might not be accessible. Which kind of makes you fall back to a more limited web, I guess.
Yeah, and advertising as well, that probably wants to be blocked. But yeah,
definitely. So the other thing that happened in February, which was exciting for me, was the release of Sonic Pi 3.3, which I don't know if you played with. It's amazing.
I need to see you use this.
Oh God, it's amazing. It's for those that don't know, Sonic Pi is a sampler or a kind of synth written in Ruby. So there are different versions of this for different languages, but Sonic Pi is one written in Ruby. It's amazing. You can basically create full audio tracks, full productions with Ruby, and program samplers, program drum machines, program synths. What's really cool is you can take input from different environments. So you could take, live input from like a microphone, augment the waveforms, and then produce completely, computer generated music.
Ace. This sounds like the nerdiest gig ever. Like.
I mean,
it's going to be great though.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's not a heavy hitter for First Direct Arena or anything, but
I think you'd sell tickets.
to probably a couple of people. But yeah, I'd highly recommend having a look at it. It's amazing. Really
awesome.
Cool. There was a not Code in the Dark. That's an amazing event in Leeds. But there was an event. It's kind of like a live coding music event where you go and watch DJs that do that. I can't remember the term, but it's quite popular now.
Like VJ sort of, but not God, with code.
I sound old now, don't I?
What are these kids up to these days?
I'll remember it and put it in the show notes when I've remembered.
But I was always fascinated with going way back to the sort of Winamp visualizations and how you could tweak the code for those and just play around and download bits off the internet. There's Milk Drop was the one that was really fascinating to me. But
I love that.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
Just mess around with some formulas. No idea what they did at the time, but
I still don't know how Sonic Pi works, but it's cool because you can just sit there with a beer and get like an arpeggiating kind of synth working, and it's great. Just ace to
and like live code it.
Yeah, proper cool.
Awesome.
Also in February, Homebrew 3 was released.
Yeah, which I love and hate in equal measure. It seems like it just every time I upgrade my Mac, something falls off, and it's usually Brew. And I can't blame Brew itself because it's doing a very good job at trying to wrangle loads of different packages.
An almost impossible job, right?
Yeah, but it's a pain point, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like Webpack. It solves one problems and creates other ones, but it's not the problem of the tool. It's just the complicated environment of which these things have to work.
Yeah, and me and Brew have made friends again, and we've got a list of commands that I'll run.
Yeah.
And that'll make it okay again. Stop the services, upgrade it, do some weird, funky clear stuff.
Yeah. My Brew Doctor is my friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is it not working?
I know which folders to just delete, and then,
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Brew Maintainers.
Yes, we'll get onto maintainers actually a little bit later, because I think one of the, and certainly something we saw from this Log4j exploit, is that the maintainers often work on these projects tirelessly for free as a passion to make things better, and I don't think that's recognised enough, is it really?
No, I mean, think of the amount of time they must be saving people, and these should be big infrastructure projects for large organisations. They should be contributing to Brew, if not with time, with money. And because their developers use it.
Totally. I mean, can you remember the days of like early Mac upgrades before Homebrew? You know, you had no idea what was going on, what versions you had installed. It was chaos.
You had a smattering of sort of Mac apps to install servers and stuff.
Yeah.
MAMP and whatever.
Oh god, yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was chaos, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So thank you, Homebrew. I guess is the message there. So moving on to March, March was also quite a big month. I think it celebrated 10 years of open source visualization with D3.js in March, which, D3.js was one of the first to really show how visualization could work with JavaScript, I think, anyway. I don't think I'm wrong saying that.
Yeah, it's been really good for us. We've made some cool stuff with it. It's sort of anything from sort of the exploratory to the explanatory is how they describe it. Yeah. But just tinkering with data lets you understand how it actually works. There's been some really good sort of COVID-related graphics and stuff built in D3 which explain how stuff actually happens underneath. And there's a really complex website which actually shows a relationship between different variants, which is way over my head.
But it uses D3, does it?
I don't know if it uses D3, but we must use something similar, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But yeah.
It's when you see data sets like that with, visualized with D3 or something, you realize how powerful those tools are, because they can make sense of really intricate data sets.
Yeah, definitely. I think Guardian were using them for a bit, weren't they?
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Because I know that green socks become quite popular. I know it's slightly different in terms of animation. It's an animation framework.
Yeah.
But, I've seen some really engaging visuals with green sock, and that's something for my January, to sit down and have a good play.
Yeah, green socks feels at home for me, because coming from sort of Flash way back when, and you had all the different kinds of tweens and stuff, and all that's in there, and it's
a lot of familiar language with scenes and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure if scenes is there actually, but
but yeah, you can tween bits and animate stuff.
Yeah. Ace. The other thing was March also saw Ghost 4 being released, which is that famous CRM. It started as a
CMS, yeah.
Yeah, it started as a Kickstarter, didn't it?
It was going to be a Kickstarter for a WordPress theme, and then it grew arms and legs, and they decided to rewrite WordPress in JavaScript.
Amazing.
Well, the blogging part of it anyway. But yeah, it looks cool, doesn't it?
It looks amazing. I still haven't really played with Ghost 4, but I love where all of this stuff's going in terms of, and as you said, I love their approach for headless CMS, headless, and also with that kind of nice editor implementation in JavaScript. I think we started to see more of the decoupling of the nice front-end experience for an editor, which hasn't always been present in WordPress.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they're sort of competing with like Medium and other blogging platforms, aren't they? But
very similar stylistically, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Medium captured a load of mindshare early on, and then they started putting the paywalls on it, and everyone's just sort of like, right, what now?
It was so frustrating to see what happened with Medium, because it was such a nice product experience, such a nice environment to share your work. And then they made it very obvious that they owned it and you shouldn't really put your content there.
Yeah.
It's quite sad, really.
It is a bit sad.
Yeah. And we also saw Chrome making some pretty serious changes to the address bar in version 90. So what I liked is they started to implement HTTPS by default, started to follow a lot of the trends that we'd seen, certainly us making in terms of everything's on HTTPS.
Yeah. Well, I used to do a talk on this about how everything went through HTTP first. And I had a demo where someone would connect to the Wi-Fi. And did it at your event.
I remember, you showed how it's a terrible idea.
And they asked them to go on Google and search for something, and then we could see exactly what was on their phone. And if they moved their phone, the gyroscope would move their phone on the screen. All very terrifying. Yeah. But it's because Google for years would happily just take a man in the middle connection, and it didn't implement HTTP to HTTPS forced HSTS tech for a long, long while, mainly because of compatibility issues and problems that they would face if they did do that. But they're finally there a few years ago. But a lot of people still not there.
Well, all more reason to own your own browser environment as well, I guess. Some large enterprise very, very afraid of turning this on because of what it might break. But Chrome defaulting to HTTPS fixes a lot of this problem. Yeah.
So this is really good news.
Yeah. Massively. And speaking of Chrome, there's also the Chrome were testing this kind of native follow button for websites. I'm not sure if you saw that. It was interesting that.
So yeah, hopefully this means they're going to bring back Google Reader because I really missed that.
You're still not quite recovered from
that.
No,
still a bit upset.
Sorry to trigger you on that one. That wasn't intentional. Maybe one day they'll bring it back to a huge fanfare. Maybe someone somewhere in Google is looking at how they can bring back Google Reader.
I think they only killed it because they had that shit Google Plus product, didn't they?
But then they killed that too, didn't they?
Which was even worse.
So the follow button kind of baked into Google was an interesting idea, and it raises the interesting questions around, where should kind of native web functionality stop and where should kind of custom app functionality begin. I don't think it actually got anywhere. I don't think they ended up implementing anything like that, did they?
I haven't seen it, no.
Traction. But yeah, and the only other thing that really flagged to me in March was there's a Basecamp, a Rails issue. I don't know if you saw this, but one of the maintainers of one of the gems that supported Rails noticed I think it was the licensing on the gem was wrong.
Yeah.
So they yanked the gem and republished the gem, but doing that broke everything. As we've seen with loads of stuff like what was that one? Left pad in NPM and all sorts.
It's just ridiculous how brittle everything is. When dependencies like that are there.
The house of cards, But it goes to show like a reasonably innocuous decision to try and do the right thing by, again, a maintainer that probably has very little praise. I'm sure he had some nasty emails in his inbox around the issues.
Well, every build server breaking is you can get a few angry people, aren't you?
But again, it prompted the point of, hey, maybe we should do some sort of sponsorship model for open source so we can look after these things.
Definitely.
So on to April, which is the month of horrendous internet April Fools. I can't remember any particularly terrible ones this year.
I think a lot of companies didn't bother with a full April Fool, did they?
No.
Did Google do a few?
I can't remember. But I think the pandemic was the biggest April Fool, and everyone was getting quite tired of it by this point.
And then Basecamp had a bit of an April Fool, didn't they? Well, unfortunately it wasn't. They told their staff to stop talking about politics at work, and that went down like a lead balloon. Particularly interesting considering one of the founders speaks predominantly about politics, both at work and outside of work. I think they just really dropped the ball there.
I wonder what happened. Was it egos got the better of them, or was it just, I don't know what happened.
I don't know. They were the poster child for the industry. Like, this is the cool way that you can turn an agency into a product company and make cool stuff. I was a right ambassador to them. I was really bought into them. And obviously, they made Ruby on Rails, which is quite a big achievement. And wrote some great books, which I still would follow the advice in those books. And then completely shut on their staff.
It's so funny because I remember early keynotes with DHH, and he always tied his opinions and his politics into how he built software. And I think it all snowballed out of a funny customer name list, if I'm not wrong, and it just went from there. Well, obviously, we couldn't see from the inside where it stemmed from, so we just seen really strange blog posts going out. And then obviously a little bit of a mass exodus. Really weird. They lost some really good people, which I think we get to a month or two later. But that was such a shame, wasn't it? Because I don't know about you, but because it's not like I idolized DHH individually, but I was grateful of the contributions to Rails and things like that. It's always difficult when someone that you respect does something utterly ridiculous. It was a bit upsetting for me, and
Yeah, I don't know if they'll get back to where they were, but they're just sort of trucking on, aren't they? Still, they're doing rolling Basecamp 4 update now instead of a big bang launch.
Are they?
Yeah, I don't know if
because they've lost half of their staff and they need to do the rolling one.
Yeah, possibly, or maybe it's just a nicer route to it. But because previously they've sort of had them siloed, so there's no upgrade path between them.
Oh yeah, they do like a big bang. Here's the new look, everything.
Yeah, which kind of works for agency because you start new projects and wrap old projects up, and you just use the new Basecamp, don't you?
Yeah.
Although I still think the very, very first Basecamp app still runs, and you can still pay for it. And it looks like every Rails app at the time ever with the tab bar across the top.
I think I built all my admin kind of looks off.
Yeah. You just nick that ULLI list style.
I think one of the mantras of the company is until the end of the internet, they always say, don't they?
Yeah.
Which I quite like.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you want to maintain hellish projects for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And well, now they're looking after email servers, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like fun.
No, absolutely not. The other thing that I thought was worth mentioning in April was, I don't know if you remember SpeakerDeck. Do you remember SpeakerDeck?
I do, yeah. Yeah.
So John Newmaker was he was quite prolific in the Ruby community.
Yeah.
And he sold SpeakerDeck to GitHub.
Yeah.
And then acquired it back again.
Yeah. And there was another competitor, wasn't there? And they sold to LinkedIn.
What was that one?
SlideShare.
Ah, yes.
I think
Then it went a bit corporate, didn't it?
Yeah. But there was a problem that, like, you have a load of slides at the end of a talk. You need to upload it somewhere. You don't want to upload your keynote.
Yeah.
It was good.
I liked how that kind of changed the way that people did talks as well. They'd be like, before they start, they've linked to the link already, so people can go and view the slides along with the talk and everything.
Yeah. Well, I took inspiration from Holman at GitHub. He used to publish his slides on it, I think. And it's just like nice, big, chunky font, not too wordy.
Yeah.
Like almost like designy.
I remember because he worked with Kyle Neath, didn't he?
Yes.
He was also of GitHub fame. And I remember Kyle also went with like really amazing color palettes and really nice slides.
Yeah, and that's where I pinched my slide templates from.
Well, you can't beat a good palette, can you?
Yeah, that's it. Choose some nice colours, nice chunky fonts.
Yeah.
Job's a good one.
Yeah, I think that approach to doing slides has really changed how I build presentations when I'm doing actual public speaking. I hate this this kind of common thing where you've got a PowerPoint jammed with
like a whole paragraph of stuff really small.
Then it's not a slide, is it? Let's be honest. You're using the wrong medium to communicate there.
Yeah, that should be a document.
It should be a document. Or it should be a Confluence page or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was April. Into May, I'm going to have to shout out that we ran All Day Here Live. That went down really well considering we were still, in the depth of a pandemic. That was the second live event we'd done. We streamed it. We welcomed Phil back to Leeds, which was great.
Yeah.
So we did a kind of hybrid event. Really good food for thought for next year. Hopefully, really do fingers crossed that, we'll be able to get back to events how we used to do them.
Here's hoping. Yeah, because we really enjoyed the All Day Hey in person. So,
it's good. You just meet so many nice people and get to have a chat, don't you?
That's it.
Yeah. And I guess also in May, just to back onto what we were talking about before, really the effects of, some of the things that had happened off the back of that Basecamp flare up, I guess, the whole political conversations at work, saw some really big effects knocking onto the open source world. So Sam Stevenson, an absolute Ruby powerhouse.
Yeah, basically wrote everything.
Yeah. Hotwire,
Turbo Links, all the things.
So much stuff. Pow, he wrote that amazing server called Pow. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I do.
Just such huge contributions to open source. He kind of walked away from a lot of it because he was, I don't know, burnt out, sick of it. What a shame,
Yeah, it is a shame.
And also, George Claghorn resigned from the Rails core team. The Rails core team then had to issue a statement saying, who controls Rails, who influences Rails. Rails is not Basecamp, really distancing themselves from the messaging that had happened before.
Yeah.
It goes to show that kind of sponsorship from a corporate party can go both ways, in terms of that you're both responsible for those actions, I guess.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, real shame. So moving on from that, what else happened in May? So Sublime Text 4 was released.
Lovely. That's the text edit you want if you accidentally open a SQL export.
Yeah.
Or .isf. It'll just crack on.
Yeah, I still love and use it to this day. I've had a little play around with VS Code and all the other ones. I'm sure it's just me not wanting to learn new things also. But
yeah, I've moved to VS Code now. I'm no longer on Atom. I'm no longer a dinosaur.
I'm going to have to get involved and I'm feeling left out. Yeah, I think, Sublime has it's weathered the storm a bit, hasn't it, in terms of editors? I think TextMate is dead, isn't it now?
That's a blast from the past. Yeah, I remember there was some early Ruby on Rails video courses. Was it Peep Code?
Yes,
something?
Peep Code it was.
And that's where I first learned about TextMate. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Loads of cool little plugins. And yeah, it was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so that's a little nudge to me to get stuck into some slightly newer IDEs, I guess.
Definitely.
What else happened in May?
We had 25 years of CSS. It was the anniversary of style sheets.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah. I remember pitching to my old boss that we should move away from table-based layout to CSS.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite there. Because AVIF 5.5 for Mac was still absolutely atrocious at rendering it. And that's what our client used.
Yeah.
So we ended up writing it twice, once in CSS. And again, sadly, back to tables with spacer GIFs in. But that was a long, long time ago. But yeah.
Spacer GIFs. Oh, man. Yeah.
Showing my age now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And kind of speaking of that nice link there into it's actually 11 years of responsive web design as well.
Nice.
So I guess those spacer GIFs wouldn't really fare very well in terms of responsive design, would they really?
Yeah, it was nuts. So when you think back to it, we used to have we'd look at what the BBC were doing and then they're like, well, it's about 600 pixels wide or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you'd make your website that wide in a table and center it. And that's it. And then when responsive web came along, you're like, you can't do that. And then the first sort of iteration of it was awful. It's like the line lengths were too long. Like
you're just like, this just stretches over the screen.
Yeah, but it's what the browser does by default. But we were so not used to it that web design just went a little bit wobbly for a bit for me.
Yeah.
And then I think we're in a pretty good place now. Obviously got loads of different pixel densities and screen shapes, and everyone's sort of got used to all the concepts that are needed to make it work. But yeah, it was an exciting time trying to figure all that out.
Yeah, it's always a nice blast from the past when you visit one of those old sites. And obviously now we have disgustingly large monitors, know, and you just see the tiny little portion in the top left. It's just fixed there.
Yeah. But we had to do all sorts of hacks to get stuff work, like negative margins and stuff to get stuff like a little column on the left and a column on the right. That wasn't obvious. Yeah. That was a hack.
It's true, actually. Yeah, because now we're kind of used to where you've got all your Flexbox, you've got your general kind of containers, and how we're used to working. Yeah, it's easy to forget how far we've come.
Yeah, and obviously different box model modes. Yeah, I accidentally implemented it the right way first time, and then everyone did it the other way.
Yeah.
It was a good journey. That
interesting history, isn't it? So moving on to, June was an interesting reminder that there are still some really key pillars of the internet that when they go down, it really does cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, we have been seeing this more and more where you'll notice, oh, that website's down, but also this one and this one and this one. It's because they're all running on the same infrastructure or they're using the same CDN. So unfortunately, this time it was Fastly that got bitten.
Yes.
And it was a single customer updating a setting somewhere in an admin panel, press save, and then they took Fastly down, which is quite terrifying.
Quite terrifying, but also, really relate to the engineers working on that.
I could totally see how that would happen.
Yeah.
Transform that config into a rule set and then deploy it out to all the nodes.
Yeah. And
then a bad. Yeah, totally could happen.
I guess it's at this point as well, someone would be like, multi-cloud, do all this and that. No, stop it.
Don't do multi-cloud.
the effort to implement multi-cloud successfully is rarely, if ever, worth the effort.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on. I guess also there was an interesting kind of revelation in June around, I don't know if you're aware of the maintainer of Prawn or if you're aware of the Prawn library.
Yep, I'm acutely aware of Prawn. It's a PDF generation library, which I have some experience in.
Yeah, because you have built a PDF library in JavaScript.
Yeah, which is... interesting. But I think I feel the same as this maintainer. It's like, you have a use case for it at a point.
Yeah.
You see if it's possible, flesh it out. Everybody wants to use it, but nobody wants to touch the code.
No one wants to touch it, maintain it, you know, pay you for it.
Yeah. For some reason, every business app, there's a requirement, must be able to export as PDF.
Yeah.
So whatever language you're in, there's a library there and a maintainer that you need to look after and send chocolates to.
Definitely. If there's anyone needing a Christmas present, it's the library maintainers, that's for sure. I think the interesting thing with that is that, and also side thought is that, you know, a lot of apps these days still don't get it right. So me and you went to export the PDF from Trello.
Yeah.
And it just exports a picture of the board.
It's awful.
It's awful. You know, sorry, Trello engineers, but you know, the CSV option was blanked out. You could get the JSON and stuff, but you know, it goes to show how hard it is to really draw, you know, really nice PDFs of content in apps.
And line breaking and page breaking. And you always get that scrappy page at the end, don't you?
With like one word on it. Or something. Yeah. It's really hard. So it was really interesting to see this maintainer of Prawn talk about how his version of Prawn is complete. He no longer needs to advance, you know, its features. Yeah. So he handed it over, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
I like that. It's good. It was a good decision for his mental health, probably more than anything. But yes, so July, what happened in July?
Tim Berners-Lee sold an NFT of the original source code for the first ever web server.
Yes.
Which then, I think that source code then turned into Apache.
Is
that right?
Right.
But yeah, selling NFTs is just like the art world, isn't it? It's. I mean, there's a whole podcast episode in just this and Web3 and the terrifyingness of it all. But $5 million for not that. You don't own the source code. No, you own the idea of owning the source code.
I was a little bit disappointed when I realised that he'd done this, but then I realised he hadn't done it for his own personal gain, had he?
Had he not? I don't giving this money away.
Well, unless I completely misunderstood. If he did, I also have to give him credit because he has made.
I mean, he invented the internet, and we've got to give him credit where credit's due, right?
Yeah, fair enough. but you know, I'm still very on the fence about NFTs and the whole Web3. What do we call it? Movement. What's, you know, I don't want to open a can of worms here. What's your view on that?
It seems like hundreds and hundreds of years of ownership law and everything that's gone into how we commerce and do stuff and get refunds and all that. It's chucking all that away and replacing it with a little cryptographic key and hoping for the best. For me, that is not going to end well. But what happens if someone steals that small string and empties out a wallet somewhere and you go crying to the police, the government, whatever, and they go, we can't do anything because cryptography.
First of all, we don't understand it. Second of all,
it's impossible. It just sounds like the worst idea. I can understand why people want to decentralize stuff and stick it to the man and whatever, but this is not a good way to solve most problems. No. In my opinion.
Right. So what I've done is I've noted NFT chat 2022. We'll see how we get on with that. I largely agree. I think it's great that, you know, the creativity of people and the distributed ownership of this stuff is being really tested. But as you've highlighted, there's a lot of dangerous side effects of doing that.
At least for now, it's just bits of art and source code, but when it gets anything more serious than that, the wheels are going to fall off.
Yes, I just saw actually before we started recording that you know Steve Bartlett. I think he founded the social chain company. He's just invested a large chunk of money in a Web3 NFT startup, and he's got loads of other interesting people involved. So
nice.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes, because that's when things go from concept to mainstream almost accidentally, right?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these problems are insurmountable, but you're definitely making it harder for yourself to do things that are quite simple in a centralized system.
Yeah.
Like have a consistent view of what's happened.
Audit trails.
Without using loads of compute power and burning through loads of energy and killing the planet. You could just flip a bit in a database to say yes. or it just seems baffling to me. But
I wonder how much of it is boredom to create new ways of doing things. I don't know.
And investor hype. Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't take investment if an investor came over and said build this Web3 thing. Maybe I would, but you'd feel a little bit bad about the environment for sure. I'd definitely be up there on my list of concerns and risks. Yeah,
definitely. I think we've talked a bit about green engineering and things around that previously as well, and I have huge concerns in that space in terms of what we're doing with some of these new technologies. We've almost gone backwards, serverless, for example, in terms of what serverless could offer us in terms of that green engineering approach. How we utilize resource and energy. It concerns me.
Yeah. Serverless is great direction, like spin down to nothing.
Exactly.
Like just there when you need it, rather than big chunky VMs sat waiting for you to talk to them.
Yeah, just mining away. What else happened in July?
We got a extension to Visual Studio Code, which lets you use the browser's inbuilt debugger inside it, so it's a bit more tightly linked.
That's a huge step for those that use it, not me.
Yeah, set breakpoints in your editor, and it does it in the browser, and it's all really nice. At the same time, they also added Copilot, which uses GPT-3. If you haven't got a beta access to OpenAI.com, I would recommend getting it. It's really fantastic. You can start a document and it will guess what the end of it is, and then GitHub have used this to enhance a code editing experience where you can even just put a comment of what the function might do and it'll guess,
which is mad,
what it is. Or if you have, I don't know, if you're making a new Ruby model or an enum and you call it something, it will suggest what the strings should be inside that class.
I saw that. It's scary.
But it's pretty much right. That's the worrying thing. Mad. So
are they using, obviously with permission, are they using that mass data set to train to learn, or how are they training those models?
So GPT-3 is being fed on the internet,
right?
And no, they don't have permission.
Here we are.
But they think it's enough steps away that it's
okay.
Like thought, maybe. Could be some legal problems. I'm not a lawyer, but I do think I have seen some of the predictions from Copilot, and they are scary good. I don't know if they're doing some clever stuff where they see how similar it is to code that's hopefully they've only scanned code bases that have got a license file in there. Presumably that's what they've done.
I think that's what GitHub said when they were challenged on this.
So maybe it's all right.
I mean, if it saves time for engineers and whatever, then that can't be a terrible thing.
So that shifts the problem back to debugging, which is the fun task.
And if you didn't write the code in the first place,
exactly. I don't know how it worked because it auto completed it. Good luck.
I've got to untangle this mess. Cool. So moving on to August, I guess there was quite a swift release following that by GitHub for code spaces.
Yes,
which I think we have mentioned previously a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about that in a couple of episodes ago, and I probably called it the wrong thing, but it is great. I've been using it, and it's absolutely amazing. I need to get up to date with this. So the good thing about code spaces is there's a standardized format for it. So it's .dev container, and this is part of VS Code's open source bit. So if you have a .dev container folder, it's got a definition file in there. It's got some Docker files. When you spin up VS Code, it will boot those containers in that configuration and immediately let you start editing stuff. That's amazing. But it'll do it on your local machine. Code Spaces is that, but in the cloud. Because there was a lot of
earlier attempts at this in various different guises. I remember when Heroku first launched, there was editors that would help pair, that Heroku runtime with your cloud environment or whatever. So this is just a good evolution of that, where we're now at a point where it can become used by anyone with a pretty primitive laptop, I guess.
Yeah, the great thing about the code space stuff is once it's been booted at once, all those layers are cached, and then any other dev working on a project can jump straight in like 10 to 15 seconds. Like if you're running like legacy or unusual projects and you want devs to jump on them straight away and make a quick tweak,
that's huge, isn't it?
You just saved them half a day of messing around on their laptop to switch Ruby versions or PHP versions or whatever it is.
That is huge, because I was recently revisiting a legacy project and had to get old versions of the Ruby running on new versions of macOS and all sorts of fun things. So that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, we're blocking out some time now to actually go back and put these dev containers in legacy projects, because a lot of them will be the same. So once you get one right for a type of project, it should be, touch wood, copy paste between them, and then we're laughing.
Yeah, cool. So also in August, Chrome started talking about their intent to remove support for cross-origin iframes.
Yep, which breaks a bunch of stuff.
Yes,
even Google services.
Yep,
and they did that as a trial, didn't they? And then they rolled it back.
Yes, it caused a lot of angry responses.
Yeah. The problem is with the web is it's layered loads of different tech over the years, and advertisers and other people have misused it.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing they want to stop people making dialog boxes in adverts or third parties scripts or whatever. But yeah, you can't change stuff that much.
No.
So it's a tricky one, really.
It is tricky when, as you said, when people use unofficial APIs to achieve, product features. It's really hard, because some of them will be legitimate and some of them will be maybe more malicious. Would it be fair to say?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tricky.
Because I remember when an alert box used to block your whole experience on a computer, like that's you done until you click OK.
Yeah.
And now browsers have sort of made it happen just in the tab, which makes it less intrusive.
Yes.
So yeah, there's ways around it. I don't think they should start yanking features out of what works.
No. Just, I think I remember when you used to have those terrible pop-up spam pages where it just sent infinite.
Oh, and you couldn't get out of it. Yeah,
they fixed that one pretty quickly.
Yeah,
but like that's how to curb that sort of behaviour, isn't it? It's not removing it completely.
Yeah, and I think the first time I noticed Chrome were trying to combat this was you'd click OK the first few times, and then a little tick box would appear saying "Ignore all future alert boxes."
Yes,
nice little fix. That I'll just do that.
Yeah, and hopefully never take me to that page ever again.
Yeah.
Also, big news in August was the web hit 30 years old.
Nice.
Tim Berners-Lee first posted his message for people to see this kind of preview of what the web could be. He just said, try it.
Try it, yeah.
It's still going well.
And try it, we did.
Yes. And ruin it, we did.
Yeah, well, there is that.
Yeah, I'd love to go to the pub with Tim and just have a chat about, did he imagine it would become this?
Yeah, I know he has some regrets about http://.
Yes.
He thinks that should have been a bit shorter, but no one types that now anyway. So
no, exactly. I think we talk about this quite a lot, but I remember when Pete Tong on one of the essential mixes on the radio for the 90s read out the entire web address.
Oh, wow, it was the longest thing as well. It was like, it just kept going on and on and on.
He's like www.asp./hash. It's quite a good little moment in history.
Listening to them listen back to it 20 odd years later was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. And also, a big moment in August was Firefox losing a serious amount of users.
Yeah, I feel sad about that, but I have also switched to Chrome. But
yeah,
that's just because that's where all the good dev tools were for a bit.
Yeah,
and it might be that Firefox have caught up now, but I think they've lost a bit of developer mindshare along the way for some reason. Yeah,
what was the? It started off as an extension. What was the dev tool that was created?
Firebug by Joe Hewitt,
that was the one.
Who went onto Facebook and wrote their first Facebook app. But yeah, the Firebug was great.
Yeah,
that was I was like, no more alert boxes, back to alert boxes. But you just alert out the value of some JavaScript that you're running.
Because that was the only way you could possibly...
Yeah, it's baffling that we actually managed to make anything work.
Yeah. I just think that's amazing how he saw... Obviously, we knew it was not ideal, but how kind of had that he could see how it needed to work, how a developer experience needed to evolve.
Yeah, well, it must have used like an IDE like Visual Basic or something, or like where it's all integrated and you can actually use all these features that you need as a programmer. And went, the web could have that, but it's going to be a kludge. But what an amazing kludge it was. It's great.
And obviously, if you look at the dev tools in Chrome now, they're completely influenced by that approach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not just by Firebug, obviously, as you mentioned, there's history around the IDEs and stuff, but I was sad to see them lose almost 50 million users over that 3-year period. Because I think Mozilla, has ebbed and flowed in terms of contributions. There's depending on who you speak to, some people accuse them of being malicious in areas, but I think on the whole they've contributed. Really.
No, I think they've been good stewards of the internet and privacy. And
look at MDN. Look at all those. I mean, I know they've at the end of life that maybe, I'm not sure. But.
I hope not, because that's where I go.
No, they said they were going to get rid of it, didn't they? And then everyone went, please don't, because we need that. It's a valuable resource.
Yeah, I've actually got an extension that blocks W3 schools.
Yeah,
because they always seem to rank better.
I hate it.
And it's like, try it in
the playground. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And we'll show you some adverts.
Yeah,
just go away.
Yeah, no, I really do. I do like what Mozilla have done for the web and everything. So I was quite sad to see Firefox. Maybe we'll see it make a kind of bigger return in the future. Nothing's ever final in these. Well, that's not completely true. There are a lot of browsers that are dead, but
let's see what happens.
Yeah. So what happened in September?
So Google paid Apple $15 billion to remain the default search engine, which is a lot of money.
I misread that completely when I put that in. I thought it was million. I was like, oh, that's pretty cheap. 15 billion to remain the default search engine.
And they must make that back and then some.
Well, you'd hope someone's doing the sums, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It could be a loss leader for visibility, I guess, but I doubt it at that price.
Yeah, that is a chunk of cash. Obviously, a lot of that cash they used to give to Firefox when Firefox had a huge market share. And that's how they could hire all their devs, because, people open Firefox, go to Google, Firefox gets some cash. Yeah,
everyone wins. Yeah. Well, kind of, not really, but...
And then Google killed them.
It's interesting, though, that sort of paying to have that monopoly of that space, sitting inside an OS, sitting inside a browser.
Yeah. Really
interesting conversation.
It is a good default, though. Google still beats Bing for me.
Bing is just terrible, isn't it?
DuckDuckGo is not bad when I do use it for a bit, and then I feel a bit detached from the results I'm used to sometimes.
Yeah, it's never the aesthetic for me. It's the fact that the results are never what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
which is obviously the main reason you search for stuff.
Yeah, I think for main keywords is pretty similar, but then long tail searches can be a bit trickier. But yeah.
And speaking of those kind of defaults, another key thing happened in September, which I quite enjoyed, is Mozilla reverse engineered the way that Microsoft sets Edge as the default in Windows 10.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So Firefox then did the same to make itself the default. So
perfect.
You've got this real race going on for dominance on search engines and browsers.
I'm surprised Microsoft even toying too much with making themselves the default and not openly publishing that's how you do it, because that's how they got into trouble last time, by bundling IE with Windows.
Yeah. If you look at going back in history, if you look at the way that Microsoft operated as a business, the way that they've, you see those famous email trails between Apple and Microsoft, the way they try and get a competitive advantage in the edge, excuse the pun, it's never really been through publishing open standards in that way, has it?
Yeah. They had that extend, expand, extinguish internal line. But the extinguish bit wasn't part of their public policy, but that came out in all the court stuff, didn't it?
Yeah. That's the problem with a good slogan. It's hard to keep it under wraps.
Yeah, that's
it. So rocketing on to October, what happened in October?
So there was a major Facebook platform outage,
yes,
obviously now called Meta, but they share a lot of services between. They have their own data centers and they have a platform which serves images and API requests and stuff.
Yes.
So when one goes down, they often all go down. But that was a biggie. That was actually quite relaxing. We were all quite excited.
Yeah.
And then messaging each other like,
yeah,
everything's down. This is great.
Wow, I've got to talk to people. This is awful.
Yeah. Just like trying to figure out what people's phone numbers were. And stuff.
I think me, you, and a few other people were just saying, maybe this is the right time to move away from a central platform owned by a mega company.
And we started looking at Signal and other stuff.
Yeah,
I really like WhatsApp.
Yeah, so within the roughly 1 hour when it come back, we'd moved back to WhatsApp and forgotten about the whole deal.
Yeah, it's nice trying some other stuff though.
It was a good try. I think the interesting thing about that, and also Cloudflare did a fantastic write-up if you haven't seen it on the outage, but it went quite, I really felt for the engineers because it went quite wrong for them in terms of, I think it got so bad they locked themselves out of their data centers due to how it was all plugged together. Yeah,
so this was BGP's issue, wasn't it? So this is how internet traffic gets routed. You advertise, here I am, this is how you get to me. It's very much a gentleman's agreement, all these protocols. There's like some tooling. I know they use ExaBGP, which strangely I've contributed to. Just some documentation, but still, ticks a box.
It's a contribution.
I didn't write the code that went wrong.
Disclaimer.
But they basically advertised to the internet that they didn't exist anymore.
Yes.
And then everything inside the network stopped working. So things that controlled the doors stopped working. So they literally just locked themselves out of everything. It's terrifying. The moment I think at one, because I was following it live on Twitter, and they were like, "We're just currently angle grinding our way into the data centers." I was like, "That's that's a bad day at work." Isn't it? That's not great.
Yeah. So what else happened in October? Sorry, I asked you a question and immediately interrupted you.
Go for it.
But the thing that I did enjoy is the situation with that US governor seeking criminal prosecution for a reporter that looked at the source code of a web page.
Yeah, absolute hacker.
Yeah, the whole language is so malicious, and this person's invaded everything that we possibly live for, and then it was just the source code.
Yeah, that code gets sent to them, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I enjoyed everything that followed from that. The news coverage, a whole host of confusion. You've got to laugh at these things when they happen sometimes. Just the complete misinterpretation of what's happened.
I'm guessing they didn't get prosecuted in the end.
I don't think it got very far, no, because I think someone who was technical, or not even technical, came along and said, "That's really daft. You're making yourself look really silly."
Yeah, if you just send someone some data, you can't then get angry at them for looking at it.
No. Yeah. I can't believe you took money from my credit card when I sent you the credit card details. I was furious. One of the thing that came off the back of, sorry, I'm jumping about a little bit here, but there's just so much that happened in October. But one thing that did come off the Facebook and general Instagram everything outage was owning that little corner of the internet for yourself. So building your own personal site, obviously it's become a lot easier to build static sites and deploy them using various technologies. One of the things is it was a frank reminder for engineers and developers, and also just most people really, that your data on these platforms probably isn't yours to own and look after. Just a kind of nice reminder.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully you can't hear my dog rumbling around the floor. Louis is just having a great time playing with all the toys that he never usually touches.
Only during podcasts does he like to bite his toys.
Anything else in October that we've missed?
Don't think so.
One thing I did, just a kind of final mention for October, was Leah Veru pointed out the whole situation with standard dialogues, controls, and the emoji picker. In terms of, if you go on every different app, there's a different version of an emoji picker, sometimes with custom emojis for that platform or app. It's time we had a more native approach to, or at least how to trigger the emoji picker. But I wonder if that's something we'll see over the coming months. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a group of people working on prototypes for select drop-downs as well. I think Edge first, so it must be Microsoft sponsored, you'd assume. But yeah, they're looking at like when you implement a custom select dropdown, obviously there's a lot of code that needs to be done for accessibility, using the keyboard up and down and all that kind of stuff. So if browsers could do that out of the box, they're looking at ways of doing that. But yeah, it's very up and coming. That I think it's been long overdue. Yes,
absolutely. And that kind of moves on nicely to November, which is Microsoft. We're toying with the idea of this buy now, pay later option that was baked into Edge.
Yeah, so this is almost payday loan territory for me, because you don't know, you're basically lending, aren't you?
Yeah.
And should that be baked into a browser? Maybe not. There's a lot of scrutiny around Klarna in the EU at the moment, especially around Christmas time, because you could go to multiple of these companies and do pay later, rack up a load of debt, and your January, February, March looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
I guess the only redeeming factor is that you are actually buying a thing, so you could probably return it if you made a mistake. It's not like cash, but still dubious for me.
And I know Monzo's recently gone into this space with Monzo Flex. Obviously, being a bank, you'd expect a bit more governance and understanding about the usage of that.
I think flexible low rate lending is good, but it needs to be done responsibly and the risks highlighted. And I think that was the backlash, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it did get quite a big backlash in terms of it's not a responsible place to have those sorts of prompts. You know, I understand making things easier for the end user, but if that results in bad spur of the moment decision making, then it's probably not the right place for it.
Yeah, I think as an optional extension, if you were to use a company, if Klarna released a browser extension, say buy now, pay later everywhere, people can opt into that.
Yeah,
I think that's better. That would work.
I think that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not Microsoft going, here you go, every credit card input is a loan.
Yeah, that is really dangerous, I think, though.
Yeah,
it's the wrong positioning for that sort of product, isn't it?
100%.
So I think that was there was one other key thing that happened in November, which was huge news for the dev community, which was Netlify raised well over $100 million to grow its dev platform. I think this is a huge win for the community, a huge win for Netlify. You know, I am a fan. I've not hidden that in the past. So I think it's amazing to see what they're going to do with that capital, how they're going to push forward that platform, and see how they kind of give back to the community. I saw they're doing a good thing this month in December for all those old domains that you've had lying around and you've never built side projects for. If you do that now and you deploy them, if you make a deploy to those, I think they'd make some sort of contribution to a fund or something.
Oh, that's nice.
I should have read properly what it meant, but
I've got loads of those.
Get on it.
Yeah.
Seems worth it. So that brings us to December. What's happened in December so far?
In December, DHH had another bit of a bad take, which was this whole programmers should stop celebrating incompetence, basically.
Yes.
And he's attacking people like I've got no idea what I'm doing, dog emoji, and like a meme even. But I think it's just a really bad take, because people are at different points in their careers and they can deal with it mentally or joke about it however they want to. And DHH should back off.
I mean, hopefully the finale of bad takes from DHH of this year. But I think the issue with that is it really infringed on, you know, at the end of the day, imposter syndrome is prevalent in the industry, but equally, you know, everyone learns and recreates in their own ways. I think he definitely hit out at copy pasting things from Stack Overflow. People obviously dug up in the internet, you know, in the history of the internet, places where he'd said he loves copy and pasting, etc. I just think it was a bad take, because it showed someone who was quite fragile in their views in terms of, if you do this, it makes you weak. Whereas actually that is a really bad take.
It's very sort of tech bro sort of angle, wasn't it? Like,
exactly.
Like, we should call out incompetence if we see it. No, we shouldn't.
It's like, what? if you're mentored or fostered people and you know, and tried to look after the progression of their own learning.
Yeah, exactly. People, you don't want to just make people stumble early in their career. It must be helped and guided. And there's a difference between trying to do something and And, having been in the industry for 15, 20 years, he thinks he knows all this, and he does. He's a very smart chap.
Totally.
But his emotional EQ is pretty low, I think.
No, yeah, he's seriously devoid of empathy and also emotional intelligence in that area, I think. It's particularly terrible because he's from a privileged position in tech. He's had a lot of his career to carve how he prefers to learn and how he prefers to write applications.
Yep.
That isn't everyone. So I think it's quite damaging that he sticks to that view. But who am I to tell him that?
Yeah.
So I think the final thing to mention in December, obviously we're not quite done yet. Hopefully there's no other whoppers that come out. But, the Log4j vulnerability has been a difficult week for a lot of people.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, this is a very common Java library which is used in pretty much all Java applications.
Yeah.
It's part of Apache Foundation. Even big players like Amazon's S3 were affected, so you could just do a GET request to S3,
yeah,
and it would go and contact an LDAP server, and then if it responded with some Java code, it would execute that Java code,
yes,
which is pretty bad. It's probably as bad as it can get, and it affects everything. So, yeah, we've had a fun week patching a few bits and pieces that use this.
Yeah.
Also, late last night, I was looking on the internet, and the patch that they released doesn't actually fix it.
I saw there's going to be in
circumstances. So,
yeah,
there is another patch to do. So yeah, this is not good. This is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours of wasted time, and money. But it's not on this one guy's to do. It's not his fault.
No.
There's 3 people funding that project, and there should be 300 people funding the project.
Absolutely.
And more.
Yeah, I mean, this is a common library used in a lot of things. If anything, it brings that conversation up again about sponsorship of open source and how we utilize that. One of the things that I think is interesting with that is so I think the reason it was the way that was triggered was through string interpolation, allowing the LDAP call.
That's right, yeah.
Now, design-wise, I appreciate the flexibility of such a thing, but how string interpolation is then calling, an LDAP server or something, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But again, just to be crystal clear, it is not on the maintainers for this issue.
This seems to be a uniquely Java thing where everything's infinitely extendable, quite weighty, lots of abstraction. You can't possibly understand it all. Yeah. I think it's because it's sort of more enterprisey and everyone likes everything to plug into everything else, and
it's back to what we were saying earlier about how some people find good and bad ways to use these features. Sadly this was exposed through, I think it was through a header originally, wasn't it?
Anything that could be logged, if it has that string in it, might trigger the bug, which is such a wide
I know.
It's such a wide surface area of attack.
Such a wide surface.
But there are mitigations. You can obviously put rules in your web application firewall, which is that's what you do on a Sunday as a quick fix, and then you just have to patch and look at everything, because you'll be surprised how many Java things you have lurking. Maybe you've got Kibana or Logstash, or there's loads of Atlassian products that are affected. Everything is affected.
One thing around that is Cloudflare and other vendors quite quick to react to say, look, we've already enabled rules that will block this sort of these sort of params getting through to your application from the get-go. That's another benefit of using some of these sorts of tools.
Definitely.
And obviously using maintained systems, maintained services, also they can patch that too.
The shift to serverless and managed services mean that if you're writing stuff in that way, you're probably patched, unless you're running Java as your actual app itself and using Log4j, but in most circumstances that would just get fixed for you and you can sleep soundly. But in reality, you've probably got, if you're a large organization, you've got some boxes somewhere that no one even knows about that's still running this, and hopefully it's not publicly accessible. And then the danger is it can, if it has access to other machines or has data on it that could be scraped, then you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, I mean the blast radius of this sort of thing is huge. If I've looked even phones and networked phones are affected by this sort of stuff.
This will be years of damage. This will carry on. They'll still be shipping. Cisco will still be shipping phones with this vulnerability on for many years to come, because it just takes so long to get everything updated.
Yeah, well, imagine the firmware that runs on those phones, getting that updated overnight and patched, and I imagine that's a huge task.
Yeah, and not every company is going to be forthcoming about their use of Log4j necessarily, and it's just going to be cost prohibitive. Massively to change stuff.
I hope it does raise that good conversation now about how we support open source maintainership, and because that's been quite a buzzy topic this year. I don't know if you think so, but how we support individuals.
Definitely support. Everyone's seen that classic XKCD cartoon where there's one little block at the bottom of a tower, and it's like this is all infrastructure, and this little piece is just some tireless maintainer somewhere has been maintaining thanklessly. But it's going to be so important. I've seen some groups been talking about sort of ethical hacking. What if you can make a worm or a virus that uses the exploit in order to fix itself? That could be interesting to see if that happens. But it's
the chances of a worm fixing the problem rather than exploiting it though are probably slightly lower. This is a bad thing that's happened, and the industry is going to have to take some time and reflect and figure out how to fix it long term. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of concludes the roundup. Thanks for sticking with us. If this is probably one of the longer episodes that we've done. We can talk crap, can't we?
Yep. This is our lives.
This is generally what me and James talk about quite a lot. But no, I guess the only final thing to say there is thanks for sticking with us this year. It's been good.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk more rubbish next year.
I hope you join us then. All right, thanks, James.
Thanks.
Bye.
So I think we've just about run out of time there. Thanks for sticking with us for a long one. A huge thank you to listening to Off Script today, and do check out the other Hey content online, as well as some of the fantastic work that Stac is doing. Hit subscribe to get some more of this content in future. Thanks very much, and have a really good new year.